Hey, this is Kevin from News Rocky. Welcome back to the show. This is the show that comes to you Monday through Friday. We're right here at the Forward TV station here in downtown Norwich at 80 Broadway, bringing you this unbelievable content. I know everyone's out there wondering, what's News Rocky going to say next? Well, guess what? You got to tune in and listen to find out what's going on News Rocky. We'll be back in a minute. We're going to be talking about, 5 topics. Current events, talk about Biden. We're going to talk a little bit about the cancel culture. Going to talk about COVID. We're probably going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the nation with regards to the economy. We're going to talk a little bit about what's fake, what's not fake, and also going to cover a little bit about this impeachment trial that seems to be brewing up. But is there anything in it? I don't think so. We'll be back in the ring in a minute. Hey, welcome back. It's Kevin on News Rocky, and thank you for tuning in today to the show that we're going to talk about some different topics today, just covering some of the most current news out there, talking about everything from the cancel culture epidemic that seems to be sweeping this nation. We'll be talking about the impeachment trials, as we talked about earlier in the show here. We'll also be talking a little bit about Joe Biden and his executive orders. Let's get right into, the Joe Biden. And you think about what's going on with Joe Biden. He gets elected into office. Like it or not, I've talked quite often on this show that although he's not my president choice, he is my president. He is my president until otherwise proven. I am going to sit here and want for him success. But I must tell you that the first few days, the first week or so of Joe Biden's administration, he has proven that he is definitely dead set on really, I think, pushing cancel culture into the political arena of the presidency of the United States. And what do I mean by that? We'll get into in a moment, but let's talk about some of the key things that he has done with the executive action. He's re-engaged with the World Health Organization, and some out there, the critics that want to really kind of oppose what's moving in the directions with Joe Biden's administration versus those that believe that Donald Trump and the Trump administration, the 45th president, should have stayed in this organization, the World Health Organization. Donald Trump was certainly very anti-partnership with the World Health Organization. And I think a lot of had to do with the fact that the way it's been funded, the way the federal government and the previous presidents have engaged in this. And, there's a lot of good things that Donald Trump did with his executive order, not executive orders, but his policy changes. A lot of the things that he was able to change, you have to remember, he had a Congress and a Senate early on. And then it did switch where the Congress then did not have the majority and just the Senate. But he still did a lot of amazing work. Some of the things that Joe Biden quickly got into is he created the position of COVID-19 response coordinator. That is an official act he did. And this is no surprise. I think when you look at Joe Biden's opinion of the previous president, Donald Trump, during the campaign, for example, Joe Biden really won on COVID. Most of the results that came back in, and a lot of the people said they made their final decision. Yeah, they didn't like their two choices. Joe Biden wasn't their favorite. Quite frankly, they said most people that went to the Biden side said they didn't really want to go there, but they did not like the way the Trump administration was handling COVID. So quickly we see Joe Biden jumping into the seat, making and shifting some of these things, and seeing his realignment with the World Health Organization, his creating the position of COVID-19 response coordinator. Obviously, we're going to still have Dr. Fauci. We'll get into Dr. Fauci in a moment, but let's stay on task with some of these other things that Joe Biden has pushed in his priority in his first week. He rejoined the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, this Paris Climate Agreement is a very interesting topic. Most of you folks out there know this Paris Climate Agreement has a real economic a lead ball here, a lead weight to America and the industry that we have seen boom over the last 4 years of Donald Trump. We have seen once Donald Trump was able to leave this the Paris Climate Agreement, we were able to see our companies come back to work here in the States because it became affordable again to actually see the work in the manufacturing world. Now that we're joining this climate sort of agreement again, what's that really mean for America, guys? You all know this means more money out of our taxes, our American money will go into this agreement that seems to have more interest in sort of the political correctness than it actually does on a return of investment. You see, that's the one thing where when you look at the comparison of Donald Trump and you look at the comparison of Joe Biden, the traditionalist, Joe Biden, the always been in politics, he is approaching it just like every other politician has. Let's go play nice in the big sandbox. Let's see what we can, let's get back in line with where it was, because that's what I remember. Almost like a punch-drunk boxer who gets up each and every time he gets knocked down and puts his hands back up again. That's the fight in Joe Biden. He knows is what to do, like it's always been done. I agreed with Donald Trump when he did leave the Paris climate agreement. I think it was a smart move. Why are we going to be competing against China? China, for example, has no environmental control. They have no conscious of the environment, and yet they create more goods and services for the world than any, and we buy them right up. Well, what Donald Trump was able to do was put that back into the American hands in manufacturing. We've seen that happen. We saw the jobs coming back here, and we were able to see the economy boost again. So what else? He revoked the permit. And this is an interesting one, and this comes down to jobs, it comes down to fake promises, and it comes down to, obviously, campaign lies, in my opinion. Revoking the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline pauses energy leasing, and this is an executive order that happened on January 20th. And since January 20th, we've not only heard from the Prime Minister of Canada, who came right out and very critical of this move. Obviously, this pipeline is supplied out of Canada. This was an agreement that was really instrumental in not just building the economy that can feed off of this pipeline, but the after effects of now shutting down this operation is the cost of energy across the board is going to go up. This is what Joe Biden has made as a mission. He did actually on the campaign trail, folks, came out and made comment about this objective of his. He said he was going to come out and, hey, I'm going to take on fracking is over. We're going to stop the fracking, stop the drilling, and we're going to end this for the environment. And unfortunately, what he's done here with stopping this has cost jobs. Thousands of jobs are going to be at risk here, okay? People who have been working on this pipeline, feeding their families, living the American dream of hard work. Joe Biden, in one stroke of a pen, has now shut down that future of the pipeline. I think this is going to have a catastrophic effect on our economy based on the energy that we could have had in the capacity of that pipeline once it was complete. Unfortunately, Joe Biden is marching to the orders of AOC on this one. There's no doubt that the new Green Deal has a lot to do with this, and those promises on the campaign trail to not just the Democratic supporters of his campaign, but those people across the country where environment is the first priority. This is payday, and Joe Biden signed that right there on the 20th of January, and there's no going back from that one. I think this kills that pipeline, unfortunately. And, again, it's the jobs. You see the people coming out now, and we see interviews with folks that are feeding their families, and they are not going to have a job. So this job creation opportunity that Joe Biden has constantly talked about over the last several weeks since he was waiting to get sworn into office, and even today, he killed jobs over the last week. His executive orders have killed the economy in this country. Let's continue down the list of Joe Biden's accomplishments with his executive orders in his first week. Let's see. We have the Keystone asked agencies to extend the eviction foreclosure and moratorium. And I find this interesting. And listen, I know there's a lot of folks hurting, and we can get into the reasons why. I would say that the terrible governors throughout this country have made some really bad policies. They've killed the economy with shutdown. We're going to talk about the shutdown and the COVID response today with Joe Biden in office compared to Donald Trump just 3 weeks ago. What was going on compared to today with the COVID response from the governors throughout the country, like California and New York. But when it comes to this exact eviction foreclosure issue, one of the interesting parts about that is there is now an extension. So I'm wondering, what about those people who own these properties out there? What about the folks who own the houses that are rented in the apartment complexes? Who's paying their bills? Are they getting an extension? Are they getting a tax break? I always have said that, many of these problems we face in our country, there is one system that has a direct connection to fixing the problems. And that one system is, simply put, the ability to use the tax system. these landlords should be given an opportunity. I understand why people are out of work, and I understand why people can't work because the government has shut them down. And shame on the government. The government should be responsible. But shutting down the opportunity for these folks to start really paying their bills again, meaning the landlords, it's a very costly move. And this extension is going to be interesting to see. Let's see, asked Education Department to extend student loan pauses. Now, this is a little bit far from what his original promise was and what he wants, what AOC and that crew, Bernie Sanders included, with really just doing away with student debt in general. That was one of the missions of the more progressive group in Washington, D.C., and they are going to continue to demand Joe Biden answers that. This is the first step, I think, this asking Education Department to extend the student loan pause. Well, but extending the student loan pause is really what Donald Trump did. If you listen to what I'm saying, some of these things have purposeful moves for government agencies to keep on operating. Some of them are done out of political, sort of posturing. Some are done just as an extension like this, and that is a Donald Trump move that he is now taking advantage of. Here's not something Donald Trump would have probably approved of. He launched an initiative to advance the racial equity end of 1776 Commission. And so, one of the things that people are very critical of the previous administration, including our now President Joe Biden, that he did not do enough, meaning President Donald Trump did not do enough for equity. And people have a real issue with this. And we actually, on the News Rocky Show, we take this topic very serious. We've talked about it very seriously. We want to understand, what more can be done to solve this problem. And I think the efforts that have been done over the last 4 years under President Donald Trump, when you look at equity, when you look at the opportunities, does that mean that basically everything that has been done with Donald Trump, with the reform in the judicial system and taking a really hard look at the criminal justice system? Donald Trump did that. I mean, he worked with Kim Kardashian. He worked with, a lot of the folks out there and freeing some people that were incarcerated with these unbelievable laws. By the way, the laws that Joe Biden himself as a senator passed when he was serving as the Senate. And this is the simple fact is we're hearing this regurgitated information from this administration. It seems more like politics 101 in Washington, D.C. Let's say some really cute words to see if we can actually get some inspiration, but there's really not a lot of action in the words. Revoking the order that aims to exclude undocumented immigrants from census. Now, let me ask you, what is the purpose? If you are not legally able to vote, and you are not able to benefit from those legal opportunities of American citizens or citizens who came through a legal pathway to this country, why would it be important for this administration to revoke the order that aims to exclude undocumented immigrants from the census? Well, the census is based on what? The census is a way for the federal government to track people and to also represent the numbers represent who will be representing that group and body in Washington, D.C. or in their own states. The population counts are actually that baseline for the opportunity to expand representation. It's very interesting. We see areas throughout this country, throughout California, for example, and some other states that are growing in rapid numbers with illegal immigrants who are now being put in a category or previously put in a category where they did not qualify for the census. And that was a big controversy that went on under the Trump administration. Unfortunately for the future of this country, what's this really mean? Well, what it really means is it's a power play for control. And if you don't think it is, you're not listening and paying attention. And I know my great Democratic friends out there are going to want to argue this subject, but there is no doubt that what Donald Trump did by standing tall on this policy was to create this real wedge between what the Democratic liberal majority party wants, which is they want total domination and control. How do you get that? Legally through the system. It's the population counts they want to improve. They want to have these numbers up so they can qualify to really take over the control of the country. It's an interesting play. I feel like we're in a Batman movie here where we have an evil sort of group here. And I hate to say this because saying that they're evil really doesn't play well into the world we should be living in. I have a different opinion, but this entire script that I'm seeing from Joe Biden is not about unity. Do you remember what he talked about in his speech? His inaugural speech was unity. He talked about unity. And when he comes out right out of the box and makes some of these really, really big executive, by the way, this is the largest amount of executive orders I think out of any president ever. Does that not make you take pause for concern about what it is the objective of this president and his administration? I think it should. I think we should all be worried about what direction it's going in. Let's see. Preserve the fortified DACA, which helps Dreamers. And now the Dreamers Act is an interesting act. And I myself got to tell you that I think this country is a beacon for the freedom that all of this entire world seeks, right? America, it represents that let's go to America, right? Let's travel there. Let's new life in America. And our ancestors, most of us who lived in America, grew up in America, we've had ancestors who lived here, second, third, fourth generations. I welcome immigrants throughout the world. I think everyone, including the previous administration, there was no greater a moment that I saw Donald Trump smiling than when he actually was able to swear these new Americans into this country. I remember in the Rose Garden watching that, and it was an amazing experience to watch. I felt like it was passion from then Donald Trump, the president. But unfortunately, with the Dreamers Act, what it does is it creates an opportunity for many people to come here with their children, the dreamers, as they qualify, and these children now become responsibility of this country. Now, listen, I want everyone to be fed. I want everyone to be clothed. I want everyone to have a roof over their head. I don't want anyone to be hungry in the world. But I know that I personally can't solve that. And by the way, when we live in a country of 350 million Americans, legal Americans, maybe not all, when we live in that country, we fail to be responsible enough in our own country to take care of our own responsibility. How is it that this America can afford and adequately provide to those dreamers the opportunity that they seek? I don't think it's a smart move. I think this one is one that is going to be very, very interesting to see how this memoranda that goes out with the Preserve the DACA Act, which is going to be for dreamers, will be interesting. So another executive order requiring masks, distancing on all federal property and by the federal workers. So unlike the previous administration, Donald Trump, we have Joe Biden, who is actually saying, I want this to be an executive order. We are going to take this topic on, and we're going to get more into his response on COVID. And by the way, guys, if you're watching the numbers, COVID has peaked, right? We're at a very major peak right now. We're at a major peak in this COVID reaction, and it's all been expected. It's that time of year where we know flu season is up high, and even with the restrictions throughout the country, or some of these restrictions, as we'll talk about in a few moments, as they lessen the restrictions throughout the country in some of these heavily populated areas, the numbers are up. So Joe Biden, I can't really argue with this. Go, this is it's a gimme. Go ahead and do it. Another executive order reversing the travel ban targeting primarily Muslim countries. So listen, the target of the Muslim countries were sort of a political ploy, I think, by Donald Trump. And in some ways, when you look at the evildoers of the world in the past, they certainly have been. There's enough credit to know that some of the most evil militant style terrorism organizations are coming out of the Middle East. We have ISIS. We have all these groups and organizations that are there. Do I think that maybe that was a little extreme? Listen, I share once in a while with the folks that you need to know. My mother's half Syrian. I'm half Irish, half Syrian. I have Syrian blood in my but I'm American. I'm not fighting for the Middle East. But do I think that maybe we should be qualifying anyone that comes here? Yes. I don't think that just the Muslim nation should be qualified. If we have problematic people, we need to identify them and deny them. And quite honestly, this country to come here, it's a privilege. How many countries throughout the world could we hop on a plane tonight and fly to any country. And many of the countries, if we didn't qualify to get into that country, they have no problem telling us to bag. Get out of here. You're not allowed. You're not welcome. You got to come back with the right credentials. You have to come back with the right, sort of all that stuff. But as far as this order, it really does lift that ban. And now, what does that mean for us? Well, the Middle East has been pretty quiet under the Trump administration. I'm going to go out on the limb here, and I'm going to say to you that we are going to see when's the last time we've seen an outbreak of ISIS? When's the last time we've seen bombings and all these things that were going? Very few incidents took place under the Trump administration. Do you think that's going to stay the same way under the Biden administration? I highly doubt it. I think this is another opportunity to see people coming into this country from these countries, into America from these countries that do have heavily Muslim populations, and the problems will be starting again really soon. Stopping the construction of the border wall. And this is a proclamation. This proclamation was signed on, again, January 20th. This guy was wickedly busy on January 20th. He wasn't fooling around, that Joe Biden, president of the United States. And let's just say what it is. This proclamation is all this is just for press releases. This is a big snub the nose at Donald Trump. But you know what's interesting about this? The people who live on the border of Mexico, the folks that are down there have been battling this unbelievable challenge. The folks who battle against the drug problem in this country have actually really good statistics that say that this wall has actually prevented crime. It has prevented crime, and it has actually caused a little bit of a disruption in the infiltration of these illegal immigrants coming into America. But unfortunately, under Joe Biden's America, this is his opportunity to run the country, and his administration with Kamala Harris, they are going to put the welcome mat out. And I could tell you right now that the first caravan has already reached the border. They're going to be welcome. The second's coming, and it's going to continue. So we'll see this all tie in together, with Dreamers, with the executive orders that are taking place, with this lack of security, quite frankly, on our borders. We're going to see some really major problems, and I would say crime is going to increase greatly in America once again based on those facts. Executive order on the 20th also combat discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity. Let's talk about this for a moment. Some of the things that are being proposed under this executive order, and this is a interesting executive order. I know some of this is going to go back to the states for their review, their take on it. But I want to talk about one piece of this order that I find is quite interesting, and I think all of us should be concerned. Now, I'm a father. I have a son and a daughter. And I don't care if my son wanted to wear a dress or my daughter wanted to wear overalls and, be a carpenter. I don't care, whatever. It's not exclusive. I don't care about any of that. I've always said I don't care if you pee standing up in a dress and pee sitting down in slacks. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care about your preference. Actually, I want to help and protect everyone's rights. But what we see in this executive order goes back to the states is that it's suggesting that those people who are transgendered young people, be able to participate in sports. Now, I don't think this is a mandate, but I think it's a suggestion, and I'm worried about the country and the world we live in. Think about those athletes, those female athletes who train every day. Statistically, it's proven, it's scientifically fact that it's a difference of science when it comes to a male physique and ability to compete at a very high level of sports in comparison to a female. So let's say this male athlete, well, they're substandard in say sprinting in a sport of running, but yet they want to drop in and they're transgendered and they want to compete against women. They are now stealing women's rights. This is an interesting one. If you think about what I'm saying, this is really an attack on women's rights. I don't really care about all the other stuff. You can, like I said, I don't care. I welcome everyone to be who you want to be. I don't care. And no one in America should care. We should welcome everyone to just be yourselves. But when it comes down to the actual science, this isn't politics. This is total politically moving parts here. This is to satisfy campaign promises, in my opinion, that Joe Biden has put forward. This is going to be an interesting one, and I feel bad. Again, I'm going to say this for the record. I feel bad for all the young women across this country who train every day, want to get a college scholarship because of their hard work, and they want to see this opportunity. But unfortunately, under executive orders like this is going to be very, very preventing for them to achieve. So let's see. Also, executive order requires ethics pledge for executive branch personnel. So you know what? I commend Joe Biden for this comment or this executive order. But my comment on this is that, you know, it's pretty interesting that requires ethics pledge for executive branch personnel. I actually heard Joe Biden speaking that anyone in his cabinet, his administration, will not be permitted to speak ill of, you know, they're not going to use those negative terms, such as like China, the China virus or whatever. We'll get into that in a moment. But Joe Biden seems to be hell-bent on saying the right things, but not really actually doing the right things, because he himself has displayed nothing but a negative attitude towards the previous administration. I don't really care if Joe Biden didn't like Donald Trump. If you want to play to these rules that you're setting for your cabinet, for your administration, you should be playing fair yourself. Be a good leader and lead by example, Joe. Don't just talk it. Actually live it. Let's see. What do we have here? A memorandum. Modernize and improve the regulatory review process. You know, not a really big one there. Nothing sexy. Executive order and the harsh and extreme immigration enforcement. So this gets back to what I was just talking about. One of these biggest issues that we see here is really with the regards of separating children from their parents. So one of the things I find interesting is this was a big political football under the Obama administration. You know, one of the things that came out under, and I say Obama, and I'm going to tie it back into where Trump took off. You know, Trump actually did separate the children, and that's a fact, and they did it for several reasons. During the, I would say, the interview process, once they have custody of these people, these immigrants that are coming across the border, they are now responsible for determining if these children are actually part of some sort of muled system where they're actually being muled into this country by people that aren't really their parents. And this happens quite often because the people acting like their parents will grab these kids up and steal children on the way in. This is a true fact. This is reality, okay? But so was it a little extreme on Trump's path? I think Trump probably went a little further than he should have, and you know, separating the children from their perceived parents could have been done a little better and maybe a little nicer for public perception. But the fact is, you know, there's a lot of challenges, and Barack Obama, his administration, and Joe Biden, they actually built those cages down there that we saw. Everything. Remember all the news articles about, oh, Donald Trump puts kids in cages and all that. That was actually the Biden administration that built those for the immigrants that were coming across to hold and detain them. Quite interesting how the corporate media, for example, really didn't get into that part of it. So let's see, what else do we have here? Extended the protection of deportation for, that's not a really sexy one either. Executive order revoked the certain executive orders concerning federal regulations. So I think some of this has to do with climate. Some of this has to do with across the board with law or the criminal justice system. So this executive order, just another to me, is a play for Joe Biden to make a stance on his first day in office. Freeze any new pending regulations. So memorandum. This is a signed copy from the executive branch, basically saying that any free or anything pending regulations have been frozen. That would basically shut down anything that the Trump administration, Congress, and Senate were working on. And, you know, quite frankly, Trump was shut down probably year 2 in his presidency. He didn't have any opportunity other than executive orders to do things, and he didn't do as many. Actually, I'm sure this guy's on track to do way, way more. So let's see. What else do we have here on the COVID? Let's see. Establish the COVID-19 pandemic testing board and expand testing. You know, one of the things you hear here, guys, is something very interesting. And you've heard this out of Ronald Reagan's voice back in the day, and you hear it out of conservatives who criticize why we should have less government. This entire sort of creation of executive orders from Joe Biden are creating more government. More government. I want you to think about this as we're talking, and you liberal Democrats who are very happy with Joe Biden being in office, understand your federal government is growing. Your taxes are growing. Your responsibility is growing. I hope you appreciate what's going on with that. Mount a vaccination campaign amid goals such as a 100 million shots in 100 days. And this is a directive that was put forth on the 21st under Joe Biden. It's going to be interesting. Let's see if Joe Biden can come through with that. There has been some little bit of snafus here on the supply chain. It looks like things are being worked out with the different providers in the pharmaceutical world. But this is an important topic to Joe Biden. As I said earlier, Joe Biden made this COVID response, made the COVID issue across his country a big part of his campaign, and I'm certain that he's going to stay on task with that. Provide guidance on safety reopening schools. So this is an executive order, and obviously under a previous administration, pretty much the entire year since March of last year, 2020, the schools have been locked down or some modified lockdown. Remote learning is pretty much standard. In fact, I heard something today about remote, workers. They're actually, most folks are going to stay remote. They're not going to go back to work. The cost-effective approach, this is given an opportunity for businesses actually in some ways where they have office work that they can remotely control it. They're going to continue that. I fear that there's going to be a little more of a push towards remote learning. Unfortunately for our young people, they're missing out greatly. Think about the sports they missed out on. Think about the memories of young people either in their senior years of high school or their first years in kindergarten. Those years are never going to be get back again. This is gone forever. And so we'll have to see what Joe Biden's administration working with education and seeing how that affects this country going forward. Let's see. Require face masks at airports other than modes of transportation. So this is other modes of transportation as well. So there's a executive order that is going to be enforced that's going to require masks. And, I think masks are pretty much required everywhere. There's very few that anti-mask. Look, even the people who are anti-vax and don't believe COVID's a serious issue, they're still wearing masks out there because it's respect to the other people around you. I don't think this is a really big one. A directive, support the international response to COVID-19, restore U.S. global leadership. That's just a feel-good statement from him. And really just kind of more and more of that. So this is really a lot of the executive order stuff that Joe Biden put out there. We're going to get into a couple other things. You guys paying attention to the COVID response, and certainly I think that one of the biggest things that we find in the COVID response is when you look at places like New York City or you look at the lockdown in California, in Connecticut here, we've had a severe lockdown as well. Joe Biden, like I said, in this executive order, this barrage of them coming out, now we're seeing governors actually within days of this administration's taking office, at the peak of COVID, at one of the highest times where COVID is actually peaking right over the edge. We're seeing places like California and the governor of California saying, well, maybe it's time for economically, we have to bring back the economy. It's time for us to pull back on some of these lockdown laws. We're watching California do that as we speak. We've heard Governor Cuomo, the famous Governor Cuomo, who has made his namesake is going to be based on his response to the coronavirus. I think, unfortunately, history will not be kind to Governor Cuomo. When you look at the number of fatalities under his responsibility, it is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But so when you look at this COVID reopening, do you wonder why Donald Trump leaves office less than a week ago, and now all of a sudden the same governors who have fought back, who have constantly said, you know what, we're not going to open, we're not going to reopen, we're going to hold off. We have to do this 6 months, a year. This is the talk that we heard right up to about a month ago from these governors in California and New York and several other governors across this country. I mean, you could look at the numbers, and I'm pulling them up here. The trend of new cases, the new cases are still growing. There's new findings right now that this is peaking. And at this time, why is it now okay for us to hold back on the restrictions? I don't really personally feel that this is about really, anything more than politics. I feel like Governor Cuomo, for example, is doing this, making these moves personally in New York City or New York, the state, for purposes of really to push back on what Donald Trump's administration was doing. This was purposeful by these governors throughout the country. I think the way they handled it was purposeful. And I think the reaction from the people in their states, when you see small mom and pop shops, how many have closed down throughout the country? How many will never return back to business because of the bad decisions of governors like Cuomo and like several of the others out there? I worry that this might have a really negative effect on some of the folks that started to believe into the system, that the system was right and we have to follow this. Are they going to still stay in their houses and not go out? I don't know. I do think the economy, if you don't really want to look at anything, if we don't get back to work, if we don't get people back into stores and restaurants and mom and pop shops on the Main Street USA again, if we don't get them back out there, we're just going to be struggling even more. Can you imagine? We talked about the moratorium on renters and the ability not to foreclose or actually, to evict. That is a direct effect on the economy, guys. Has a major effect. So this is going to be interesting. We'll have to see what that really means when it comes to the next generation, right? So when you look at the different states, and I do have some numbers and stats here from throughout the country. I want to pull up, let's say, California, for example, under the direction of Governor Newsom. Now, Governor Newsom, if you remember, this is the same governor who had set some of the strongest policies across the country, but also was seen himself, was caught out at a dinner, having dinner, no mask on, when he had his own restrictions there. He definitely was out in front of this. So, again, we'll have to see how this COVID response works when it comes to turning back the clock and allowing the economy to reopen again. I'm all for it, but I'm asking you, the viewers of News Rocky, do you think it's more about politics? Because a week ago, that's not what they were talking about. They were talking about keeping it locked down. All of a sudden, President Biden shows up on the scene. We can start lessening the burden here. So what else do we have out there going on? I want to talk a little bit about cancel culture. Cancel culture is an interesting topic, and I think it's one of those things when you look at cancel culture across the board, what is really cancel culture mean? What does that actually mean to you? Well, we saw over the last few years, especially after George Floyd this past year, during the incidents took place, we saw Columbus statues being torn down. We saw a real movement across this country to remove anyone that or anything that has or resembles anything that could be hatred or I guess racism. But now this is where we're going to the next level. Cancel culture is extended into, say, Mike Lindell from the MyPillow business. Obviously, very famous guy. His commercials all over the place. Mike Lindell is an interesting story, and I hope you folks that are really serious liberal Democrats who think Joe Biden is the answer to everything. So on this show, in this episode, it's a short one today. We talked about cancel culture. We talked about everything else today. We talked about what's going on in the news. Unfortunately, the news every day is going to be more and more about attacking the previous administration, using them as basically the scapegoat to protect this new administration, Joe Biden. I think that Joe Biden talked about unity. I'm going to ask one more time to Joe Biden, please prove unity as your mission. I will stand behind it, but I don't see it. I haven't seen it, and most of America hasn't seen it either. Thanks for tuning in to News Rocky today. We'll be back in the studio tomorrow, bringing you the News Rocky Show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. We'll talk to you then.